When preparing for tonight, I saw a preach this week by Louis Giglio, and he talked about a lot of things, to be fair. But towards the end of the preach, he touched on wisdom and God's wisdom that we should possess, and he described it as the ability to maximize the journey that we're on with God, that is our life. He was talking about how it's the best way to follow him, what he has in store for us, and making most of every day. And I really liked this explanation. Like, I don't think that in any other place would you kind of hear that way wisdom described like that. It really kind of encompasses what being wise is really about. Wisdom isn't about being the smartest or the most intelligent, the best in your class or anything like that. It's about living every day of our lives in a way that's pleasing to God. And a life that kind of glorifies him and what he's done for us, and kind of making every moment that we have on this earth count. And today, if you talked about to your friends and stuff, if you went out at church and started talking to your non-Christian friends and everything about making the most of life and making every moment count, they say it, you always hear them talking about it in a completely different way. Normally, like jumping out of airplanes or go backpacking or cross like Asia and stuff. But to us, it's something a lot deeper than that. It's not superficial or temporary. It's not. It's just not a fleeting trip or a fleeting buzz off of adrenaline. It's an everlasting commitment to a relationship with our Creator. In Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10, we'll be looking at Proverbs quite a lot. We'll also be looking at several different verses, but you might as well stay in Proverbs because otherwise you're going to be going through the whole Bible. It just says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So I think a lot of the time we tend to forget the kind of how big God is and the magnitude of him and who he is. A lot of the time, I know for me, I kind of see him as this kind of cool guy up in the sky who kind of jumps in and helps out every now and again, and who can, give me some good advice when I need it. But I don't always have to listen to him if it doesn't fit my plan of what I think is a good idea. But in reality, he is way more than what we can ever fathom in our minds. He's the creator of all life, like everything we see in the future, everything we've already seen, all kind of technology, all life. He's made it all. He's the Father. He's the Judge, the Protector, and just the ruler of everything at the end of the day. And I find well, at least me, I tend to box him into this this small little category, but he's way more than what I tend to think of him as. And what he can do is more than what we could ever imagine. Like our wildest dreams are just so small to him. I tend to, and I'm sure a lot of other people tend to just kind of ignore him until I need him, until I need that help, until I've got myself into a stupid situation, which is more regular than you'd think. And just the kind of immensity of God should strike this fear into us if we really understand what he is and what he's capable of. And this is what it means where it says about the fear of the Lord, and how it's kind of funny how we have this fear of other humans and other people in our lives, how they judge us, how they see us, and yet we don't have the same fear of God. And it's the classic thing of like, who are we servants of at the end of the day? Are we servants of God, or are we slaves to just the people around us? Yeah. So just as I was preparing it, really struck me how shouldn't our lives and the decisions we make in them reflect this, like the idea that God is our creator, God is our ruler and everything to us, rather than men and humans and stuff. And yet 99% of the time it never does. And this is where we should be following his teachings and his plans instead of the ones that the world tried to tell us are right for our lives, are good for us. And this is what this verse means, and this is the basis of being wise. It's saying the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When you fear something, you obey it, you follow it, you do what it says. And when you obey God, when you have that fear and you obey him, then it makes you wise. You make wise decisions. You don't follow what the world says. You follow what God says. And it's not about being scared of God like some creepy monster under your bed. It's about recognizing his place above us and in heaven, and just standing in awe of him and what he is and how insignificant we are compared to him. Just seeing the beauty of his creation, realizing there is nothing ordinary about our lives. Like, we take it for granted so much, just going through the kind of the normal everyday things, but it's not normal, and we're wasting a chance here to use our lives to glorify God. So yeah, just talking about how wisdom will kind of like benefit us in our daily lives. It's a tool that is there for us to use throughout our lives, but a lot of the time, at least for me, I choose not to because I'm an idiot. And like normal tools, like a builder, you only get the benefits of a tool when you actually use it. Like, it doesn't help a builder if he's got a hammer in his pocket but just uses his hand. It will hurt and it'll be stupid. And you'll think he's stupid, and yet look at us, we're stupid. Me and Paul were kind of chatting this week about Solomon. So he's known, apart from Jesus, of course, as the wisest man to kind of ever live. And yet he made so many stupid decisions in his life. He married a lot of women from a lot of different places. He had idols. He built statues for pagan gods. He forced slave labor upon people. And yet this is the man who wrote most of Proverbs. The man who God blessed with wisdom and discernment, and the man who ruled over God's nation as king. And yet I find in my own life, much like Solomon, I only ever make wise decisions when I'm making a conscious effort to make those decisions, like using God and praying to him, and asking for wisdom and God's guidance. It's no use having that wisdom if we don't choose to use it and choose to bring God into every decision we make. In Proverbs chapter 3, there's a whole list of benefits that wisdom brings. And you can read them at your own leisure at home, because we're just going to touch upon a few. In verses 5 and 6, it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight." And then in verses 21 to 26, it says, "My son, do not let wisdom and understanding out of your sight. Preserve some judgment and discretion. There will be life for you, an ornament to grace your neck. Then you will go on your way in safety, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Have no fear of sudden disaster or of the ruin that overtakes the wicked. For the Lord will be at your side and will keep your foot from being snared." When we have this wisdom that we're talking about and choose to use it, then we can trust in this all-knowing God to lead us in a direction that is right. We can be confident in knowing that He's by our side every step of the way, and He has plans to build us up and not ruin us or break us down. He's seen what's ahead of us, and He knows that whatever we face, we can get through it. And not only can we get through it, but it'll actually benefit us, and we'll get something from it, because they're plans for our good, even though not necessarily at the time we might not feel it. It says here how God will guide our feet so we don't have to be afraid. He'll stop us from coming into danger. And I need this all the time, because I get myself into a lot of stupid situations, which if I just listen to God, then literally probably 99% of them wouldn't even occur. And one of those is, you may or may not know that last year I was at university in Southampton. It wasn't a good year for me, and definitely one that I didn't use God's wisdom to decide upon. I didn't pray on. I didn't. I've got a tendency to just make whim decisions and just go with it, and that is never a good idea. And I'm not going to lie, like, God did use me in this year away, in tons of different situations, but I knew deep down during that year that it wasn't where I was meant to be. It wasn't where God wanted me. And it came to the end of the year, last April, May, and I just knew that I couldn't stick out for another year. And so I got into a lot of thinking. I spoke to my mum and just basically broke down and told her how I couldn't go through another year, let alone another 2 years of that in Southampton. And at this point, obviously it being quite late in the year, I'd already signed a contract for a new house, which I was meant to be moving into in July. I didn't have a job at home to go back to. I was obviously committed. I paid ridiculous amounts of money to already sign a year of my life away. And also, I was meant to be on the committee of the Christian Union at my university that next year. Bear in mind, several people had already turned stuff down, so there was only like 4 or 5 of us. So me going would be quite a big thing for the Christian Union. But I just knew deep down, and just from praying and just in my heart, that God didn't want me there. He wanted me back here in Barnstaple. And this is one of the times where I just completely trusted God and His plan, and just went with it. Over the next week, I withdrew from my course at university. and I was arranging with my family to come home. They'll come to pick me up in the next couple of weeks. Um, and I called up Sainsbury's at the time because, as lots of you know, I work there now. But I worked there before I went to university as well. And I was working there on my holidays, and I thought I might as well give it a shot, see if there's anything going. And it just so happened at the time when I called, a job opening had just come up. It was before it had been released to the public or anyone. So I was the first one to kind of hear about it. It started off, I think, just part-time contract, but they ended up it went to full-time, which was even better. And they basically gave me the job then and there that day. So I called my mum and like said, obviously I got a job, I can move back home. But I still had this house to pay for a year, which I hadn't even stepped foot in. So I went home, and a few months passed. It was coming up to July, and nothing had still kind of come from the house. I just kind of accepted it and just thought, oh, I'm gonna have to pay like £500 a month to not live there, which is terrible. So I just kind of accepted it and just thought, well, if I'm meant to be here, I'm meant to be here. I'll just pay it. I'll do whatever to be back in Barnstaple. And then literally like the week I was meant to pay, it was the end last week of June, first week of July, and it was when my first month's rent was due. And the estate agent sent me a text that week saying that they'd found someone to replace me on the contract, and they got on with all the other housemates I was meant to be living with, and I didn't have to pay anything towards the rent, which was like literally just all God. I did not expect it to work out that way. I thought I was at least going to have to pay a few months' rent, but I didn't have to pay anything. And it was literally just complete glory to him. And then I thought this was just phenomenal. Obviously went like through my time back in Barnstaple, and then in October time I went back to visit some friends in Southampton from uni, and I went to one of the Christian unions, which I'd been worrying about because it was only a small Christian union, and obviously me going was quite a big part of that. And even more kind of glory to God and His plan is they'd had to move rooms because they quadrupled in size. Literally, I knew about 5 people there, and everyone else, bear in mind it had only been a matter of a few months, and everyone else I didn't know. There was probably about 40 people there, and gone from probably maybe like 10. And yeah, it was just so amazing, and just chatting to the guys who were running it, like they were just, it was just a testament to what God was doing in that place, or potentially me leaving and then everyone just turning up because I'd left. I'm just like so thankful to what God did, because the situation I saw myself in back in April, May time, I just thought it's just going to go horribly. It's not going to go well. And just going from that place of desperation and just giving it all to God and just trusting in Him and knowing where He wanted me. And He did more than what I could ever have imagined. He had bigger plans than what I could have even dreamt of. So that's where just trusting in God and just following Him, He does things better than what we would do. And He brings great situations out of terrible decisions, as long as we trust in Him. And yeah, a part of that is putting kind of wisdom at the top of your priorities. In Proverbs 4, chapter 4, verse 8, it says, when talking about wisdom, cherish her and she will exalt you, embrace her and she will honor you. We should desire wisdom with everything we have, every part of our being. Back when talking about Solomon, God asked Solomon what he wanted. Solomon could have chosen anything in the world, and he chose wisdom. And God was so pleased at this that he made him the wisest man in the Bible, again, bar Jesus. This would go on to benefit him in every other area of his life, because we use wisdom every day, more than what you could ever imagine, in every decision we make. Because if we ask God for money, we probably blow it all. If we asked him for a new job, we'd probably end up messing it up and losing it. If we asked him for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, then the relationship would probably end in disaster and pain. And another thing that Louis said in his preach that I was watching was, and it really hit home with me, was how we don't need wisdom. No, we do need wisdom. We don't need more money, stuff, or people in our lives. We need more wisdom to manage it all. Because with wisdom, we can deal with anything that's thrown our way. It will help us in every other area of our lives. Like I said in my own testimony, I just trusted God, and then everything else that I could ever have wanted just fell into place, just because God is awesome and just knows so much more than me. And then talking about how do we get wisdom, a little while back, if you remember, we looked at James, and in, not James Bimmel, James the book. You did look at James Bimmel though, because he was preaching on it. In James chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you." And God here, he really doesn't make things hard for us when it comes to receiving wisdom. He knows that we're pretty simple-minded, and like with most things, he lays it out quite nicely for us. And it's a case of we just need to ask. Like, we hear so many times how generous God is. He's got so many gifts for us that he wants to give us. We've just got to ask for them. There isn't a limited supply of wisdom that he's holding back, and he's like, oh, I can only give them so much because, I need to save some for the next lot. And there isn't some sort of crazy strict application process that we have to go through. All God requires from us is that we believe, and that we don't want it for selfish reasons. We've just got that kind of heart set on God, and that heart set on his wisdom. And there's no point chasing wisdom if we're not going to chase God. As part of getting that wisdom is that you get that as a result of chasing God, and through that relationship you build with him. In Job 28, verses 12 to 28, this is a long one, but we're in church, so we read the Bible. In the words of Tim Ross, a fantastic man. From verse 12, it says, "But where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? No mortal comprehends its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me. The sea says, it is not with me. It cannot be bought with the finest gold, nor can its price be weighed out in silver. It cannot be bought with the gold of Ophir, with precious onyx or lapis lazuli. Neither gold nor crystal can compare with it, nor can it be had for jewels of gold. Coral and jasper are not worthy of mention. The price of wisdom is beyond rubies. The topaz of Cush cannot compare with it. It cannot be bought with pure gold. Where then does wisdom come from? Where does understanding dwell? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, concealed even from the birds in the sky. Destruction and death says, only a rumor of it has reached our ears. God understands the way to it, and he alone knows where it dwells. For he views the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and a path for the thunderstorm, Then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to the human race, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. These verses in Job just kind of reiterate how wisdom isn't something we can read about in a book or learn in a class. It's only something that we can gain through God. It's something that we're given by God. As I said at the start, it's more than knowledge. Even the most intelligent people you meet are not necessarily wise people. It's the capacity to see things from God's perspective and to respond in a way that follows what he says in the Bible and his teachings. And obviously this brings me on to the one book that actually will help you with learning wisdom, and that is the Bible. Thank you, James Bimmel. Again, it's pretty simple. Read the Bible. It's God's word, and God's pretty wise. In Psalm 119, verses 97 to 104, it says, "Oh, how I love your law. I meditate on it all day long. Your commands are always with me and make me wiser than my enemies. I have more insight than all my teachers, for I meditate on your statutes. I have more understanding than the elders, for I obey your precepts. I have kept my feet from every evil path, so that I might obey your word. I have not departed from your laws, for you yourself have taught me. How sweet are your words to taste, sweeter than honey to my mouth. I gain understanding from your precepts, therefore I hate every wrong path." So, this, like I said, it's another simple one from God, just laying it out there, making it easy. He just told us to read what he says, and it teaches us about wisdom. How strange. It lays it out in these verses. His word will make us wiser than any enemy, teacher, or elder that ignores his word. It's not about consuming just tons of information, just reading tons and tons and eating textbooks or anything like that. It's about applying what you know and what you've learned in this book in a life-changing way. There's no point reading it if you're just gonna not do it, not actually use it in your life. Those who are wise are the ones who allow what God teaches them to make an impact and change on their lives instead of ignoring it. And I just really want to challenge you guys to ask God for the wisdom He willingly gives. It wouldn't be wise not to. If you truly kind of want it and want to go deeper with God, then I just really, really encourage you to ask Him for it tonight. And not only tonight, but to pray for it every day, in every situation, in every circumstance, and that He would just bless us with it, because He is so overjoyed to give it to us, and it comes with no cost, so we can just follow His plan for our lives, because it is so much better than our own. It saves you quite a few years of going your own way if you just did what God said the first time.
And I think Greenslade had a story as well. I had a story about a lady who literally one of her big prayers was that she prayed for God's wisdom. Like every day of her life in the morning, when she woke up, she's like, "God, give me wisdom today." And the person that was talking about her said that she is literally the most wise person that I've ever come across. He said business leaders come to this woman for advice because she is known in the area as a wise person. They're like parents come to talk to her about their children. She has no children herself, but they come to her and say, like, how do I deal with this situation? Because they see the wisdom of God in her life. Like, wisdom is not dependent on your circumstance or your age or your intelligence. Thank the Lord for that. But it's something that God just freely gives when we ask. If your heart is right, and it's not for your own personal gain, and it's not for your glory, but it's for His, God gives. And it's great that if anyone lacks wisdom, just ask. It's brilliant. Why don't we stand up? Because it'd be good to just respond to God, and you've been sat for too long in the sweatiness of stuff.